No one likes to admit when they're wrong. We hate to confess that we have made a mistake. And oftentimes people want to blame others for the shortcomings that they have in their life. It's common for one to blame their parents for the way that they were raised as a reason why they engage in certain sinful behaviors as an adult. And while circumstances in one's past certainly have an influence upon one's present and future, those past circumstances do not dictate one's actions. Each one of us has a choice whether we're going to do right or whether we are going to do wrong. This point is illustrated with an analogy that God described to Ezekiel. He talks about 3 generations of people. He talks about a righteous man, he talks about his wicked son, and he talks about his righteous grandson. Notice what the text says about the righteous grandson, who is described as a wicked man's son. In Ezekiel 18 and verse 14, it says, "Now behold, he has a son who has observed all his father's sins which he committed, and observing does not do likewise." This man grew up with a father who was violent, a father who practiced idolatry, a father who committed adultery, who oppressed the poor, who stole from others, and even more so. We read about this man in Ezekiel 18 verses 10 through 13. This man would have had a very strong but very negative influence upon his son. His son could have easily grown up and followed in his father's footsteps. Many children do this. But this man did not. He observed his father's actions. He saw the sinfulness that was there. And he made the determination that he was not going to follow his example. He was not going to be like his father, but he was going to be like his grandfather, a righteous man. Friends, we have to make our own decisions. We cannot afford to engage in certain behaviors simply because others, even if they are our parents, engage in these behaviors. In the end, we are each individually accountable to God. Ezekiel 18 and verse 20 says, "The person who sins will die. The son will not bear the punishment for the father's iniquity, nor will the father bear the punishment for the son's iniquity. The righteousness of the righteous will be upon himself, and the wickedness of the wicked will be upon himself." God will not punish us for what others have done. He has given us the freedom of choice to either obey Him or disobey Him. Friends, we must choose to obey God no matter what others are doing or have done, so that we can avoid the fate of the wicked man. There have been often times that we see those in the world around us, especially in our society today, who grow up in very troubled situations. They grow up in broken homes. They grow up in homes where addiction is rampant. They grow up in homes where they are abused in ways that beggar description. But yet, when they become adults, they have the ability to decide if they're going to remain held back, if they are going to allow their future to be dictated by their past. But God has given you and I a wonderful gift, and that is the gift of free will. We have the ability to decide how we're going to live our life. Are we going to allow another person to dictate that for us? Are we going to allow the sinfulness of our peers or our sinfulness of our family, or sadly even sometimes the sinfulness of a spouse, to keep us from serving God? Also, on other occasions, I've seen instances where those who have been faithful to God have had children that have fallen off into sin. And as a result of their sadness, their disappointment, the parent ends up becoming unfaithful. Friends, we must remember that we will answer to God only for ourselves. We will answer for the sins of ourselves. We are not burdened with the sins of our father. We are not burdened with the sins of our children. But we are to focus upon serving God, keeping His commandments, and standing justified in His sight on the day of judgment. Thank you for joining us for our program today. We pray that you have a blessed day and a wonderful weekend.